Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Sam and Phil for another special spoiler discussion. And today we are going to be talking about the season finale of The Acolyte, episode 8. I've titled it on the video description episode of The Acolyte because Wikipedia is saying that, but Disney Plus still just calls it episode 8. So maybe I'm going to correct this in the next day if they never actually release an official title, or if The Acolyte is correct for that. But before we start getting into things, how is everybody doing today?
Yeah, doing good. I haven't been able to make it on for the last few episodes, so it's nice to come back finally and talk about the entire show.
Yeah, agreed. It's nice to be back. I think it's been a couple weeks off. So, yeah, no, it's good. Again, much like Doctor Who, it feels like this finale has come on very quickly, both shows being 8 episodes. So, I mean, I'll say it already. We've not even started talking yet, but I mean, season 2.
Yeah, it's on the list. It's on the list to talk about. Is it a if or is it when? I think
when.
It's the latter. And it feels the last 3 weeks interviews and stuff like that, and people that pop up today, we'll talk about them both the tall ones and the small ones. Yeah, there's some surprises which none of us saw coming, maybe some that we did. But as always, we are live, so if you are watching along with us, please do comment your thoughts on The Acolyte. The season is finished now. Have you been patient with it? Did it work for you in the end? Did it not work for you in the end? I really like to get people's thoughts on that because everyone's had a different experience with the show. I know people that have waited to watch the episode once the finale is out. I think Dave said to us he was doing that. He's not going to watch it until the series is done. I know other people doing that. I know people that caught up between episodes 7 and 8. I know people that watched it weekly like ourselves. So it's really interesting to see people's relationship with the show. And that goes to both positive and negative. We don't just shit on people that dislike stuff, but we want to hear why. We want to know what worked for you and what didn't work for you. So please do comment. And if you're not watching it live, do leave a comment and we'll reply still. And if you want to find out about other videos, because Star Wars is going to go away for a little bit, there might be some videos here, there, everywhere. But you can find us on linktree.com/cinemasavvy. That will put you through to our Facebook, Twitter, Letterboxd, and Instagram, where we talk about what we are working on, where we're announcing new videos, and we've got a link to our Redbubble store in the description. But Phil, I'll jump to you first. You mentioned you've been on for a few weeks. Same with yourself, Sam. Do you two both just want to really quickly give your thoughts on the last sort of 2 episodes? I know we had the second part of the flashback last week, or the correct point of view of the flashback. Just where were you heading up to that finale and your thoughts on it so far?
Yes, I got it slightly wrong. I thought the second flashback would be episode 6, not 7. So I thought we'd have a 2-parter for the finale. This still was a kind of a 2-parter because when you get into the episode and you have Sol talking to May, it does look as though that flashback was him explaining it to her what did actually happen. So they do link it there a lot more than I was expecting. But no, I've been watching, as I said, weekly, been very much involved, very much looking forward to it all. And obviously, being a huge fan of the High Republic, it was always something I was gonna love. I was interested to see how they were gonna end the finale. It didn't end exactly how I thought. There's a few things I did predict, a few things I didn't, which we'll get into as we go along. But no, I was nervous in a good way, and yeah, paid off in a big way. Even amongst the people who I talked to who aren't huge fans, say they did land the finale in comparison to what they thought for the rest of the series. So for me, that's a big compliment as they can give it. I can give it a much more. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I feel like the second half of the season has been stronger overall. I think the second flashback episode was stronger for me. And I guess part of that is because it was more Jedi point of view and we actually got to see a bit more of those characters that, you know, have been lost over the first half of the season. So it was good to actually see them in action, actually see who they were. And I think it was good to kind of have the answers about Sol, you know, there. I think I've really liked the characters that we've had, and I think it's just good to get a more well-rounded, you know, view of them going into this finale, so that we could kind of wonder what was going to happen. As we go into it, you know, there's some things that we predicted a few weeks ago, or that we've said, or that we've not said, that did happen in the episode. And there's still stuff left up in the air, but I think we've left it at a point now where there is still story to tell. So yeah, I think 8 episodes. I feel like maybe it could have been longer. I would have liked to have spent more time with some of these characters, but I think for the story that they're telling, they did an overall good job.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and especially where we were sort of catching up to last week. I know I haven't said on both videos, it's not a problem, but I do think heading into today, just my really quick thoughts and having a week to reflect on last week, the week to week has worked really well for me of the show being done weekly. I know that's a big thing. Some people prefer it not, but I've liked the enigma that is built up over the multiple weeks. My biggest flaw of the show, and I spoke about it last week too, is actually the run times. And I think by putting episode 7 as the flashback, although we got, I guess, that being longer, today being longer, I just feel like overall, maybe because I'm watching House the Dragon at the moment, the quality levels couldn't be more different. The story's so different, but it's a bang on hour every week, or a little bit over an hour. And I just, whilst watching The Boys, which is also over an hour each week as well. I know we're blessed with TV at the moment. The Bear's out as well, which is shorter episodes. I really think this series could have benefited somewhat more if maybe each episode was 45 minutes, maybe some of them pushing 50. Episode 5 still absolutely perfect, and I don't mind episodes being as long as they need to be, but I do feel like we have missed a bit of development somewhere, and I don't know if I don't think it's the structure of the series. I think it's the episodic ones where I was left wanting a little bit more by some characters, and kind of kicking in with that. If we go into today and what we've seen so far, I guess we can talk about Phil, as you mentioned. Last week ended up being essentially what happened when he spoke to May. His version of events for her to find out. She already knew about the killing. Obviously, us, the audience, finding out the truth as well about what Sol did. And then we have her sort of breaking off, going on a quick little space chase, and her heading down to Brandok, where it all began. And I've got to say, I don't know why I didn't see it coming, but I loved that the finale was set there. I know the importance of the planet for the story, for what happened with the cult, the burning, the bodies, but choosing to set the finale there, it might be seen as common sense to some, but I think it really added to this show and the season and its format, that it made sense to go back to where it began for an ending such as this. And I quite liked that. I'd be really honest, I didn't particularly care for the chase. It looked great. I didn't know what those... Was it an asteroid field? Phil, was it anything to do with the hyperspace stuff from 100 years before? Is it a High Republic thing?
No. I think it's more just the rings. The hyperspace disaster, which I love they referenced, is actually the beginning to phase 1 of the High Republic. Basically, there's a ship that the Nile caused a collision for in hyperspace. It broke up into chunks. Those chunks went to various points because obviously you're traveling through hyperspace, so they come out at different junctures. So when they hit the planet, that's basically meteors hit the planet, so it then caused the loss of life. The rings are just rings, I think, in this particular instance. But I did love the fact they referenced it because it is literally the opening to the entire High Republic.
Phil? Sorry,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, the space chase was fine. I mean, I recognize that, we've had very little stuff in space, really, especially in terms of combat in this show, which I think is fine. Every Star Wars media doesn't need to have that. So it's nice that they had it, but at the same time, I think by this episode, I'm like, I probably do care less about that. I'm like more about, where's, what's going to happen with the story. But I do agree. I like that they said it on Brandok and that they were going back there. I wasn't truly thinking about where this episode was going to be set. I was just kind of like, okay, well, it's gonna come to some form of crescendo. But it did make sense, and I think for Sol's owner sanity, he needed to go back there anyway to kind of face his demons. So yeah, I like that was there.
No, that's fair. And to be fair, I mean, I know Mitchell wasn't bothered on that space chase, but now that's out of the way, we can talk about the really the good stuff. So, I mean, we're going to try and do this chronological order, but we might save a couple of things toward the end. But I guess we'll start with Kamir and Osha, going literally back to the ending of episode 6. She's got the helmet on, and she is sensing that a Jedi is going to get killed by no weapon. I can't remember if that's the way they phrased it. We know what obviously that ended up being, who that was, but I am absolutely loving the helmet from Khmer. I know I spoke a lot about it in the last couple of weeks. I saw those Hasbro Pulse pre-orders sold out in the States, but not in the UK. So who knows at some point. I don't want to say the foreshadowing was really easy, and I know Leslye Headland's not done her sort of spoiler interview with Collide yet because she's been doing some really cool stuff every week with them. But I can't wait to find out a bit more about this because I don't want to sit here on a chair and think, haha, this was so predictable, all these things. But as soon as you see Osha, on the side of the island, not in the hooded robe, but it's looking pretty dark side, isn't it? It's looking like a red lightsaber would go very cool with that. It's looking like she's going to do some dark side training very soon. And obviously with the fact we've still got May in her, in the clothes she stole from Osha a couple of episodes ago. And I'm not going to get into wrestling, but it was very double. It's called a double turn where the hero becomes the villain and the villain becomes the hero in the space of one wrestling match. It's very rare. It's done and it's done well. And I kind of sense that are we going to get this switcheroo for today? It has been building over the last few weeks, and I like where they went with it. But obviously, having Khmer and her jetting off to go to Brandok to see what's been sensed, Khamir's obviously got his eyes on the prize. His acolyte might still be an acolyte, but no one really cares about that scene. They care about the sort of 5 seconds afterwards, where for the first time in my lifetime, I guess we can say Darth Plagueis has been seen in live action. No, it's not a Dementor from the Prison of Azkaban on a train carriage, putting his fingers around the wall. Yes, it's a very short clip. Seconds. I have a high-res screenshot of the photo, and you can't see much, but I had to rewind it on the PS5 controller. It goes about 10 seconds. I was like, hey, like it's 6 in the morning. Am I seeing this right? Press the backwards button again, and I was like, yeah, it's Darth Plagueis. The brain starts whizzing. Is he here to take out Khmer, or is he Khamir's master, or is he on this island too? All these questions that don't need to be answered today because the purpose of this reveal is a long-term storytelling technique. Maybe not even for a season 2, likely for a season 2, but even if there was never a second season of the show, it's putting a character known within the canonical expanded universe into the story, someone that we've heard of, someone that we all heard of his tragedy. What do you both think about this reveal? Did you care? Were you excited? It's a big talking point whilst not being a big talking point because there's still so much left open. I'll talk about a certain senator character at the end when we talk about Vanestra because that was a theory as to who could be playing him. But what are both your thoughts on that reveal?
So before we get to the reveal of Plagueis, to go back to the opening with the helmet, she does turn around to Khmer and goes, I see May, she's going to kill Sol. He goes, oh, so she can kill without a weapon. So he's still operating under the assumption that it's May who's going to do the killing, but also we know visions in the Force aren't always black and white. Nothing's exactly true. The Force is always in flux. So I kind of took that as it was at face value, but more of the, okay, so doesn't surprise me. I'm still not quite sure who's going to end up with who. I thought they might both end up, or one end up dead, something like that, but we'll get onto the results of that later. But yeah, it was cool to see that part, and then especially when, before they even go off, she's calling the shots. It's not Khmer. He's kind of going along for the ride. And to end up back on Brenda, where it all started, it makes perfect sense. Star Wars, like poetry, it rhymes. I love it. But yeah, then to see the hand come around the door and to see that face, again, I did the same thing. I did a double take. I annoyingly had it spoiled for me just before I'd watched the episode, but it was only a brief picture, and even that I was like, it can't be. It could be, but no. And I kind of forgot about it, luckily, until I watched it. Went, oh no, I was wrong. Oh, it is him. Okay. The wider implications, obviously, is regardless of whether there's a season 2 or not, regardless of whether they tackle it in books or comics or whatever happens, as you say, it's pulling a character in that makes sense for the setting as well. It 100% makes sense in terms of the timeline. It makes sense from an age point of view. Everything kind of clicks. So it's not disjointing. In fact, it adds more questions without taking away answers. So it puts him in the perspective of, is he Khmer's master? Is he, as you said, just on the island? I think from my point of view, I think it's going to be along the lines of, there's a rule of two for a reason, and he ends up taking out Khmer at the end of it. And that's going to be the long shot. I think that everyone will end up dead. He'll live. He'll have his new apprentice, which will be Palpatine, and then we'll get into episode 1, and then everything will be grand from there. But it's the seeds. It's the planting of what's to come. And Star Wars has always done this in a nice way. Even from an abstract point of view, look at episode 4 with the whole, you fought in the Clone Wars. Well, that one line ended up spanning an entire 2 TV shows, more. Plus, we look at Ahsoka again. The entire opening crawl gave us Rogue One. There's so many little aspects that people can draw from, and it's really cool to see. So, 1 5-second cameo doesn't break canon, doesn't change anything. What it does, it kind of gives us another perspective to add to the list, and something that when I saw it, yeah, I freaked. I rewound just to make sure I got it right, and yes, so good.
I enjoyed. Well, I mean, I've enjoying Khmer shock horror in many way. I've been loving his performance and how he looks helps as well. But I think his interactions with Osha specifically, I think, have been a really interesting one compared to when it was him and May. And of course, the majority of that was before he had revealed himself, so we don't really see those interactions. I know we mentioned, I think the last time I was on George, about kind of, of course, this kind of a predictability that at some point May and Osha would switch at whatever point. And I actually just watched the Doctor Who video recently where it was like, if there's any time an actor is going to be playing 2 parts in one episode, whether it's a Doctor and another a character or a companion of a character, then of course they're going to switch. Like then that's not going to happen. There's no other reasons to do it otherwise. And so it's interesting that, we've had these twins kind of not covering each other, but definitely May trying to be as Osha. And as we go through this episode, the actual, real idea that Osha could turn to the dark side. And I think when she was speaking to Khmer about what she saw, in my head, that was immediate red flag. Oh, it's going to be her. She's going to do it. Like, especially after just having the flashback episode as well, to me, it was not going to be May. It was going to be her that was going to kill. And especially you've caught, and then and then you see her in the outfit, and it's just like this, and her lead, and I'm like, this is going to happen. She's going to find out properly, and she's going to get angry. And that was all I could think of. Unfortunately, much like Phil, Plagueis was spoiled, and that was annoying. But at the same time, I was hoping that he would appear anyway. And it was good to have that tease. I think a lot of people will want more, and they'll want more now. But I think there's something really exciting about just having a little bit of a tease. I mean, we know what's going to happen to Plagueis in the very end anyway. We know what's going to happen there. But I have faith in kind of, whether it's Leslye or anyone else that, the plan is to get from the Acolyte to the Phantom Menace and to that era, and they're going to make it as plausible as possible without kind of relying on what everyone would think, is the case. A lot of people are going to have one thought, this line is how they get from here to there. But there's so many other possibilities and opportunities. And I think that's why people are so, annoyed and frustrated that it's gone in a certain way and that certain characters have been created to get there, because people just think Plagueis, Palpatine, and that's it. And they won't think of everything else that's going on around it, especially the Jedi element and kind of their complacency. And so to have this and to have Plagueis in the background, we don't know anything. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if there is a season 2 going to happen. Will there be a bit of a time jump to help with this? I think there's so many possibilities, and I think that's the really exciting thing. And to even just get a tease of that, to me, was absolutely fine. We're still within this story right now with these characters. We don't need to introduce another one in episode 8 and have them be a core part of it. Especially a character like Plagueis, who's got a lot of buzz around him. So yeah, I think what we got was absolutely fine, and just makes me more excited for where this journey from the perspective of the Sith can go.
I agree, and the Phil, I'm sort of stuck in my head of something you said. Actually, you mentioned how Rogue One, it's the line from the Star Wars crawl. Could the Acolyte as a TV series end up being the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I mean, okay, I know that's not what the Acolyte means, but look at how they address the May and Osha stuff today. You are not sisters. You are the same person, essentially. The light and the dark, maybe, however you want to look at that. But they were created through the Mother and the Virgins in the Force. Now, what we know from Mr. Palpatine is that Darth Plagueis could create life. If it was me, as a fan, talking about the future of the show, I'm not sitting here saying, give me 3, 4, 5 seasons. I don't care with respect to demands, but I would like to see the story continued. And I would like to, if I'm being really honest, I'd love a 3-season series where season 2 you could sort of bring Plagueis into it, eventually have him kill Khmer and replace Khmer with Osha. But I would love a potential idea or premise where it is about Darth Plagueis discovering these new elements of the Force. I know that's a very random thing for me to say, and it's way too early.
Give us a theory, George. Give us a theory.
Oh, no. I mean, we're not a theory channel, but the theory channel doesn't do theories anymore, does it? It just cries on live streams. But I would just love that if Darth Plagueis uses the knowledge of Osha and May to create life, and that's obviously what one of his go-to powers is, because we know that Palpatine, I don't think, could do that. Maybe he could, but it's something where he
does eventually. And that's the thing. So it's going to be a whole point. He's going to learn from the failed creation. I think that's... Plagueis will go, okay, so they tried to create 1, end up creating 2. It was unbalanced and it wasn't the final product per se. So he will then finalize it, shrink it down to what it should be, discover how to extend his own life. Then you have Palpatine come in. He teaches his apprentice. The last episode will be Palpatine killing Plagueis. That's, again, 3 seasons, whatever it's going to be. I could totally see that being the thing.
And my understanding of people want to talk about canon breaking as well. Sorry, it's just that I still can't get over Kelly Mundy, one of the wildest things of this entire series, if I'm being really honest, is the Kelly Mundy age debacle. But you could even do time jumps if they wanted to. I wouldn't care. Like, they marketed this show. Yeah, like they marketed this show like this is going to be about the Sith or the persona of a different point of view. And I think the first season as an overall has given us that, right? And we'll talk about season 2 at the end. But I'd love, if they want to do time jumps, do it. If they want to, as you said, they've got to, Sam, you mentioned they've got to, the journeys get into the Phantom Menace. Phil, you've mentioned, the ends of Palpatine killing Plagueis. There is so much they could do if they want to do. I would be fine with that. I mentioned again some of my struggles with the show has maybe been the writing and the length of the episodes. But Leslye Headland's approach to the series, to approaching canon, using stuff such as cortosis, going back to the archives of the Sith to bring in someone like Plagueis. She spoke on record that the Phantom Menace is her favourite of the Star Wars films. They're using the choreography for the duels has been akin to the Star Wars prequels. They're the same team that worked on the Vega hallway sequence in Rogue One. They've absolutely shown they can continue with this, and I'd love to see more. And I feel that's what we're going to get, and we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end, because they are bringing some politics into it, which could have been a massive saying. But if we move on from Plagueis for a little bit, I mentioned choreography and duels. Let's talk Khmer and Sol. So obviously Sol was on brand out looking for May. Khmer, the moment he senses him, just disappears, and we have, not to put it shortly, another excellent duel. I mentioned the choreography a couple of moments ago. I love the team that's working on this. I can't remember if it was yourself or if you, Sam, brought it up on a video on this series, but the lights, this is such a nerd thing to talk about. People have been talking about how the lightsabers look on the show. People have been comparing it to how the sequels, they look great. They were using like the white colored blades to make it easier to CGI, but they looked a bit too white and the colors weren't right. And I've seen all these differing conversations about what it means to ignite a lightsaber and what it looks like. everyone is saying that however they've done them in this alongside the choreography has looked more akin to the Star Wars prequels and has that originality sense of it comes across like the lightsabers from there. I know I was meant to be talking about fight choreography, but yes, the lightsabers look fucking great. But this duel was exceptional again. No dueling, even going back to the opening scene of May killing Indira, the choreography in all these stunts, seeing the Jedi using it for defense, seeing the different Jedi. I know, Phil, you can correct me on this. There's like a fighting stance. There's like a term for each Jedi and how they duel. I love that when George Lucas made Star Wars, it was just let's do something fucking cool, and that was the go-to for lightsaber choreography. And I like the fact that within canon that has been expanded and developed into a set of choreography within Star Wars. And just seeing it in this, even like Khmer when he puts it like that to himself, pulls the second blade out, we get to see him dueling with both. We get to see the Force being used as a weapon, the surroundings for the slow-mo sequence. I thought it was outstanding. I know Soul didn't get as much to do drama-wise compared to other episodes, but I'd have to give a shout out to the choreography, to the stunts team, to the actors. It is incredible. And if this is what we've got from a first season, I can't wait to see whatever happens next.
Yeah, so I brought it up when we did the first episode because I was talking about how in Kenobi and Ahsoka and other things, the lightsabers haven't looked quite right. They looked a little bit too clean, too clinical. It looked like they were using literal prop lightsabers, the toys. This looks a little rawer. It looks more. Those blades look a little bit more unstable, so it looked a little bit more natural. But yeah, the actual choreography in this has been, barring the end of Kenobi and that wonderful fight between Hayden and Ewan, this has been the best in the Disney era by far. The one between Vader and Obi-Wan has more emotion behind it as a fan, but this is, for a technical point, this is probably the best they've done in the Disney era, and it was incredible to watch. As you say, it's the environment as well. It's the Force being used as a weapon. The cortosis as well. Soul working around the cortosis. Even Soul adapting and using the same technique that Khmer use of deactivating and reactivating the lightsaber. It's not a very Jedi thing to do. It's very unethical. They think it's not very honorable, but he was adapting. He knew he couldn't win in a straight up fight. The fact that, Leslye Headland mentioned before, okay, you're going to see a lightsaber you've never seen before. Well, the split to have the Shoto blade inside the main blade it's unique. It's not entirely unique. We have obviously seen the like a Sarge, for example, who could put both her blades together to make a double-ended, even though it's an S in the middle rather than a straight line. It's not entirely unique in that perspective, but to still have that aspect to it and it to be one standard, one more Shoto was, it's been outstanding from the beginning, but also actor's name's gone from my head, Soul.
Lee Jung-jae.
That's it, yes. So he has been, obviously he learned English for the role, and obviously by the end of this duel, well, we'll get to the ending point later on, but he himself put everything into this role. I think it kind of paid off because between himself and Khmer, it led to more emotion because they're fighting over people, not just over something inanimate. It's kind of cool. And watching the fight as a whole, you could see Soul also getting more and more desperate. The fight went on, but also Khmer at the same time going, okay, I've got to pull off a few extra stops out here. And yeah, I could ramble on about it all day, but honestly, this has been one of the top tier, if not the best fight sequence I've seen in a long time out of Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add. I think as this series has proven kind of how good fight choreography can be, and we'll talk about May and Ilsha in a moment, but I think across the board, all the fight scenes have felt intense. It's felt like there's weight behind it, and it's not just the style of the lightsabers, but it's literally how they're being used and the stories that lead to these fights happening. And I think if we then go back to the first episode, if we watch that again, I feel like I'll watch that episode and that first scene with Indara and May, and there'll be an added weight to it because we know more of the story. And, it's things like that which I think makes this show interesting. You can now go back through it and go, I understand that, and I understand that. And yeah, I think that technically, I think the fight was, peak. I think everyone was really impressed with episode 5 and how that went, and this just matched that and potentially, was even better. I loved how Sol worked in this, and I think I'm hoping everyone's gonna enjoy the double lightsaber throw and Sol knocking them back and commit. I just thought it was a really excellent move, and to me that, like, whether or not I like Sol completely as a character after what he's done, it just makes me go, do you know what, I respect your fight ethic and everything that you put into it, and it made for a really cool sequence and a couple of moments in it. So yeah, I'm just really impressed with it.
Yeah, that's fair. And kind of sticking with that, we also get May and Osha having a fight of sorts. I'll be honest, didn't particularly care for this, but we know they're going to have that reunion with each other, the face-to-face, the talking of what happened. I will say, obviously, neither of them have lightsabers, so it's felt like more of a kung fu type fight. The incredible transition of when they go for the high kicks, and then that merges into the Sol and Khmer. It's do you remember, was it Galaxy of Heroes, Phil, that animated stuff that was on the Star Wars YouTube channel? It reminded me of those like incredible transitions when it would like boil down like the Star Wars saga. It's like a 90-second animated clip.
Yeah, the Adventures one, yeah.
That was it. It was really cool, but I didn't mind the little fight. But obviously, we knew what the goal was. The goal was to get Osha to find out the truth about what Sol did, and the way in which we get to it. And as you mentioned, Lee Jung-jae has been incredible in the series. Again, we'll always bring the fact he didn't know English before taking the role. 3 months to learn it for this is remarkable. And the way in which he goes out, and this is what I've really found interesting about the writing on his character. Even 16 years later, when he returns to Brandok, he isn't sat there with regret about what he did. I'm not saying he's arrogant. I'm not saying he's right either. But he says, you were 2 people that basically I needed to take you, and I still maintain that now. And unfortunately, I did kill your mother, which was a mistake, summed up. But I like that he wasn't there mourning his actions of the past. He was there to set things right. I don't know if that translates well from me saying that, if it makes any sense at all, but that's how I certainly felt with it, that he's doubled down on his choices of 16 years ago, which maybe is a character flaw for him, which ultimately leads to his undoing, to which we have a forced choke death, something I didn't see coming from Osha as well, not May. Khmer almost like licking his lips when it first happens. I've seen a dreadful take online. I know we get a lot of them, but it's like this was the first ever forced choke death. Pretty sure it's not.
Have you watched episode 5?
Well, no, but just also like they think in canon, like no, definitely not.
Yeah.
Like definitely not. I don't know where that comes from, but again, it's easy clicks, right? And the blue ticks always get their money based off views on Twitter. So, but I loved this moment. Maybe not the choking part, but seeing Sol die was not only gruesome, but what Osha's been through, the person that took her from her family, the lighter for 16 years, the person she trusted most, was the one that had put everything in motion for that. Granted, she doesn't need the full story of events of what happened. She just needed to know he killed my mother. What she'd mentioned before is that she failed her Jedi training because of those negative thoughts, because those emotions would come through, is something I think we'll touch upon in the future within Star Wars. And they need to, which is very interesting, especially with Khmer. But just this one moment with the bleeding of the lightsaber at the same time. It's Sol's lightsaber too, isn't it? Just so I want to double check that. Which kind of makes it even more heart-wrenching that her lightsaber is now going to be her old master's turned red. Is one of my favorite scenes of the show. The bleeding part, not necessarily the choking. I don't want to be like all seeing this live action. Like, it's something I've just never really thought about. And I don't think too many people would. We know it exists within canon. We spoke before in live. There's a massive history on this. The Jedi Survivor did it with the High Republic Jedi when he came out of the cryo chamber. But just seeing the blue blade going red, it reminds me of like I had in 2005 an Anakin Skywalker lightsaber that would change color. It reminded me a bit like that, but it was a great moment for Osha, for the series, for Khmer, as he has found his apprentice at last. And what I kind of love with where this went was it wasn't Osha like, oh my god, what have I done? It wasn't me saying, oh my god, look what Osha done either. It's them collectively like, yeah. Like, it's not a dark side thing. It's not a nasty, we're all evil. It's the circumstances to which this outcome for Soul, the characters in that area understand it. And that's why they're opposed to the Jedi. Now, we know why two of them are opposed to the Jedi. Khmer, we still don't know. Maybe we'll know in the future. But what were both your thoughts on the bleeding of Soul's death? And it's kind of a grisly way to go that Soul's been such a great character in this. It wasn't a noble Qui-Gon Jinn, stab in the jaw. It was a character moment. And I think that's what it needed to be.
Yeah, so very, very briefly on the fight scene between Osha and May beforehand, what I did love was how they started off opposing, and then by the end of it, they synced up the moves so that everything they did was exactly the same, which then leads into the whole they are the same person, just in two different bodies thing that we get to much later. But no, the death and the bleeding of the crystal, that scene is brutal in so many ways, but also as a it gave me chills because when the lightsaber initially goes off, you see down the barrel, as it were. You see right through the haft into the crystal. You see it blue. It doesn't really. You go, okay, cool. It's a nice lightsaber shot. You don't really pick it up until then. You see it start to change later on when it goes back to that shot. And at that point, Osha is pouring all of her hate and all of her malice into the blade, but at the same time, she's choking out Soul because she is finding out the truth. And comparatively to like episode 5 and 6, where you talk about, well, the truth can hurt. Well, yeah, and what I told you was the truth from a certain point of view. It's that same Jedi foible of, well, I told you the truth, but not entirely, or I gave you a perspective. And this was Soul going, yeah, okay, you weren't supposed to overhear me. I was going to tell you when I got the chance, but okay, yes, this is what happened. And Osha just finally lets go. From May, you see the look of almost of pride. It's the case of she's scared of Osha, but at the same time, it's like, there we go, that's my sister kind of thing. From Khmer, it's like, oh, I picked the wrong one. I want this one now. This one will do. She actually has more potential. And from Soul, you have someone who's there going, trying to forgive her as he's being killed. And it's so heart-wrenching. And then as soon as she activates the blade afterwards and you see it start to change, it's not fully gone, and she has to commit to it. It's at that point you can see there's a moment where the blade starts to retract from being red to go more blue, and she just finally just fully commits to the, no, I am right in this instant, and then boom, it's fully red. Now, to see Anakin have the red saber in Ahsoka was really cool, to finally have all the kind of component pieces. This, for me, as someone who's read about this, we talked about it before we came on air. In fact, it's been established in 2017, because originally Sith either grew their red crystals or they kind of, found red ones, but it was really had to be a dark side. There were so many different ways of doing it. When they established this method, they also established the fact you could purify one to turn it white, which is what Ahsoka has, because those are Inquisitor blades. It could lay out something in the future where if Osha decides to turn back, she can purify that blade. So there's ways and means around what they could play with it for. But in this moment, in this instance, with this death, that look on Soul's face at the end of he thinks he's finally going out on his own on the right terms, his conscience is clear, but he still has hope. Oh, yeah, it was amazing, but also, yeah, chills, complete chills.
Yeah, I think to just touch upon the initial Osha May fight as well, I think what you mentioned, George, I when the high kick turned into the lightsabers, I was just like, oh my god, like I literally went, oh yes, because I just thought it was such a good transition, and I know that people will be using it. But you're right, even with kind of the way that, you know, you have these two different people essentially who've been brought up in different ways at this point, eventually coming together and kind of matching each other. I think their whole backstory now has such an interesting element added to it because of them basically being, you know, one, which we've kind of known throughout the entirety of the show, but to kind of know that potentially it's just something that's kind of gone wrong in their creation, that there's two of them when there was only supposed to be one. I think it adds to this, you know, are you born to be good or evil, or, you know, whatever perspective you have on that is. But it made this kind of eventual scene hit harder. And again, like, as I said, I did think that Osha was going to kill Sol anyway, but I didn't expect it to be as kind of as brutal as it was. And I think I've really loved Lee Jung Jae throughout the entirety of this. And so even though I was pretty certain that he wasn't going to be around after this, I was just hopeful because I just really enjoyed his performance. I think he's done such an amazing job with, you know, learning English for this, and his, you know, presence on screen, his fighting. I think he's brought out so much emotion. And even though I'm fully aware that what he did was not right, I still, in some ways, respect that he was still holding on to the fact that, you know, in his belief, he was doing something that was going to help this person be, you know, the best version of themselves, or the person that they wanted to be. So, you know, it's one of those where I'm kind of in two minds about it, but I don't necessarily blame Osha for killing him. I think the way that she did was again unexpected, but makes sense for, you know, what this story was going to be about, the deaths of the different, you know, Jedi, and how it was going to be done, and that it wasn't going to be with a weapon. To have the Force choke, which is one of the most kind of iconic Force moves from Star Wars, I think made sense there. And to see the lightsaber bleed, it was really tragic. And I know people pointed out that, you know, she's now she could now use the lightsaber that killed her mother, and that adds the other element of revenge and kind of the ultimate, you know, you are a Sith thing to it. So again, I just think it's clever, and I think it's interesting. And whether or not you figured out what was going to happen or not, I think what was presented to us was extremely effective. And it was kind of weird to kind of have it end at that point with May, Osha, and Kamir. And it's like, how did we end up at this point from where we were at the very beginning of the show? So yeah, just wild in what happened, but I think done really, really well.
Yeah, I can't believe I hadn't clocked that that's the lightsaber that killed her mother that she's going to wield moving forward. That's pretty sadistic and great at the same time. It's, you know, like making Darth Vader live on a castle where he got absolutely torn to pieces and his wife pretty much got killed. No, there's some really good conversations up there, and I kind of like that with the show, that not only just having three of us on to get this discussion, but what we said for weeks and weeks and weeks is this show is building towards a finale. It is an 8-episode series. It's not Villain of the Week. It is the final episode. We'll bring it all full circle once more, and it is absolutely done that. And kind of where we'll go, before we stop talking about May and Osha, we'll talk about the tree sequence where May's memory is wiped, which I at first thought, oh god, typical. Then I thought, oh, is Kamir a sadistic man and just going to kill her as soon as like Osha's back's turned? I had all these horrible thoughts. No, he just wiped her mind. Normally, I think that's what things are cop out. However, it looks like it's going to play a part in this series. It played a part moments after when the Jedi came, but it looks like it could play a pretty heavy part in the future. And I guess that's where we kind of bring in Vanestra, who I've avoided on purpose not talk about today. There is a lot going on with her character. Not a big bad, perhaps, or anything, but she's been scattered throughout the show. And it looks like, again, if we're speculating the future, it looks like she will end up in almost... an antagonist role, whilst actually being the Jedi, being, you know, the realigning with Osha, right? That's the whole purpose of the show, is you're meant to be on Osha's side. It's going to explore the Sith. Vanessa might have been the antagonist the entire show, and it looks like we're going to get a lot of her moving forward. I loved the sequence of the Senator. I've forgotten the actor that played him. Is it David Harewood?
Yeah.
Who we know was cast in the show. Everyone was saying, is he going to be Darth Tenebor? Is he going to be Darth Plagueis? Is he going to pop up at the end and kill everyone? And we get him as a senator. And I'm sat there thinking, here we fucking go. We're getting politics in Star Wars again. And I don't believe he's been cast in the show for one scene to never return. Not playing it on the nose. The Jedi, you know, not need to be regulated perhaps, but what if one of you were to go and, you know, do something? How would we stop you? I saw a great point of line about this character. And Phil, you can definitely correct me on this because I don't follow the High Republic. Someone was talking about how in the Star Wars prequels, the Jedi, they're not weapons of the Republic, but let's be honest, they kind of are, right? The Republic send them out on missions, the Republic make them do this, that, and the other. Someone basically put forward the idea that whilst we're going to get the exploration of the Sith, are we going to get the political side of the Jedi where they maybe not lose their power, but they become more controlled by the Republic and what the Republic demands? Now, I don't know if that's been explored in the books. I know they'd probably be helping the Republic in the books, but it does make me wonder, is there going to be a bigger picture scale with the Jedi and the Republic, which I would quite like to see. We see comments about how the Republic could be corrupt in the show. Obviously, we know heading to the prequels that it's a flawed system. They literally elect the head of the Sith to be, you know, the Chancellor. But, you know, we know the rest after that point. But I really liked that sequence. It's almost like a Christopher Nolan ending where they're like wrapping up all the story arcs of a montage. But the moment of which they, Vanessa is obviously talking to the Chancellor and the other senators about what's happened with Sol, about a cover-up from 15 years ago, and that he has, you know, they're sort of hanging him out to dry. I really liked that. I'm not in this camp of, the Jedi's bad, the Jedi's arrogant. But, yeah, man, the Jedi have never been clean. That's, I think, a given within Star Wars. I don't think that's a criticism of them. But I quite like the fact that there has been some murky political things going on in the centuries of history, and that we're getting to see a first-hand example of it, which ultimately leads us up to, you know, the final shot of the show being the back of Yoda's head, Puppet Yoda we're going to add, but also the confirmation that Vanessa was Kamir's master. They sensed each other. He crapped himself, which is great, because that's clearly going to be something that comes up in the future too. But what were both you thinking with the Vanessa side of things? I know I've sort of chucked in her whole arc from today, but she has had a presence in the show, and I do think she will be one of the heavyweight characters moving forward, maybe replacing that Sol role.
So Vern is a character I know very well. She's in both Phase 1 and Phase 3 of the High Republic. You follow her journey from a Padawan all the way through to her then becoming a master. It's a lot of... She's dealt with what happened losing her own master in Stellan Geos. She's dealt with what happens with Elzar Mann and Avar Kriss, two Jedi on the Council. She has dealt with the Nile. She has dealt with so much in that era. So to come out the other side a bit jaded and a bit kind of frustrated with the RD. So we don't have the RDC in this. The RDC is the Republic Defense Coalition. They are literally Republic's kind of National Guard, Home Guard, whatever you want to call it, kind of thing where they can go and settle like little disputes and stuff, but it's not a standing army. And they make a big deal of mentioning that the High Republic, they don't have this standing army, which we then get in the Clone Wars. But this is the start of the Jedi getting their power kind of neutered. You see it more even before Palpatine comes into full power. You do start to see it where the Jedi get sent on a mission by the Republic. That's kind of a given, but a lot of it has to be referred back, and then they have to go to the Senate. And a lot that you get then in 2 and 3 is the whole, well, the Jedi want to do something, they have to talk to the Senate. And even with Yoda saying, we got to tell the Senate we're losing our ability to use the Force. Well, that's because at this point they've been kind of put on a leash because people are getting fed up with the Jedi kind of being this self-righteous bunch who will go in and think they're above everyone, which is not how the Jedi are supposed to be, but obviously it's how it comes across. And a lot of that, we don't think we're better than you, we just know we are kind of attitude is what people get sick of, despite them always having these intentions, which is why I love the line in the last episode, the flashback, with Mother Anastasia, one day all these noble intentions, they're going to get you killed. That's going to be the end of the Jedi. Or you're going to have these noble intentions, and that's it. And it's foreshadowing, obviously, what happens in the prequels and everything else, and it's cool to see. And Vern, I hate what they've done with the character, because I've seen what she was like at the start. This is obviously towards the end of her character. I don't know what they're going to do with her going forward, but she's become quite jaded and quite frustrated. And she's trying to protect the Jedi. She's trying to protect what she knows and who's protected her. So I see why they've done it. I hate it because I love the character so much, but I hate it from a point of view of, damn it, I wanted to see the Venestra I know, but from an actual progression point of view, it makes sense, and I like what they've done with it. So I'm not hating on the character or the actress either. I'm not hating on anything towards the show. It's a case of, I can see why, and I love the development. Just annoys me, and I go, damn it, I want to see the cool side of Venestra that I know and love from the books and comics.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot towards this ending to kind of go through. I know, kind of, even when Sol was still alive, and they see the Jedi ship, and then Kamir's like, "Oh, they're not coming for me," and he's very aware of kind of what is going to happen, and I think it had been mentioned anyway about Sol being kind of the fall guy for this, and that, he would be kind of at the center of this cover up. And that him dead is going to enable the Jedi to kind of work with this. I appreciated that Venestra still had her own respect for Sol, but at the same time knew that something needed to be done with this. I really, I forgot that David Harewood was even in the show because it had been that long. But I was happy to see him. I think he's a great actor, and I think, again, to get that political angle in here after it's been kind of teased throughout the season, it was good to see it. And yeah, to quickly go back to May as well, getting her memory wiped. I mean, I was a little bit kind of, why they're not just all going off together. I was a little bit kind of like, what's going on here? But for the story anyway, I think it's interesting to have May now with the Jedi, a place where she's never been before, especially with her memory wiped, and to see how the Jedi and Venestra could utilize May, or what is going to just happen with her in general. So yeah, that's really interesting, and yeah, I guess to kind of see how the Jedi work a bit more, or at least how the Jedi in this time work. I just think, there's been so much aggro over nothing on the internet just about the Jedi and who they are, who they're supposed to be according to people. But we know from the very beginning, one person's perspective is not the truth, and everyone's going to have a different opinion and thought on it. And it's very then easy to make something the truth when you get a few more people telling the same story. That's how the whole Osha May situation at the beginning happened. So to have that work now, but after we've seen the true events, is a bit gut wrenching, because you want these characters to have a little bit more kind of people behind them. But now, the characters of Sol, for Indara, for Kalnaka, for Torbin, they're just going to be assigned to Jedi who did something wrong on this planet and caused the death of other Jedi down the line, because of Sol. And that's a little bit, sad to see, because although he wasn't perfect, Sol was trying to do a lot of good, and we know that he was a good master. So yeah, it's a shame, but I mean, it really does now give us a platform for what could happen next, and I'm very intrigued about the Venestra Kamir relationship and what actually happened Was it her, or was it him, or was it a combination? Or was he enticed by external forces? I think there's a whole story there too, alongside everything else that's going on. And I think that's why it's really exciting about the prospects of what a season 2 could be.
I agree. And kind of, as you mentioned, Vanestra and Kamir, the fact Vanestra knows full well that would have been my Padawan, not Sol. But she's going for the angle, she's going for the cover up, she's looking at the bigger picture. Whether it's for personal reasons or for the better of the Jedi Order, we don't know at this point in time. And I'm excited to see where that could potentially go. And as you said, Sam, there's so much story that what we've spoke about today, for so much that we could talk about in the future. It's not I don't want to be rude and compare it to Ahsoka, but Ahsoka's like, we know they're setting up for season 2 because this is part of a continuity leading towards a film, right? And it was as blatant as Thrawn has arrived on the galaxy. He's got this sort of carcass army with him. These guys are stuck there. It's very like set up for what comes next. Whereas this series has ended in a way which has left me wanting more. But it isn't as obvious as they're on their way. It is literally a placeholder, like, this is where we are up to. And I don't want to compare it to Batman Begins because I mentioned Nolan earlier, but it's almost like, you know, at the end of the film and, like, they're on the roof and they've got the Joker cards. That's almost like the Darth Plagueis stuff. Like, there's natural story to come because they've set up so many different angles. It isn't in your face at what's to come, but us speculating, talking about what could come from it. There's a lot laid there to do a lot more. And if we kind of head it towards what could come next, do we think there's going to be a season 2? A Bungo in the comments says they better not. Wow. I think they will. I could be wrong. We don't have the viewing data. Disney have that data. Disney will make the decision. Lucasfilm will make the decision. We know Disney are streamlining content. We know too much has been produced. We know they want to get back into doing films for Star Wars. We know we're getting the incredible Andor season 2 next year, which is very exciting. We know Skeleton Crew still is to come out at some point. We know we're getting Ahsoka season 2. I really think we're going to get an Acolyte season 2, probably in sync with the Ahsoka season 2, and then we might not get any of a live-action Star Wars TV show for a while. I think, if, like Disney doing with Marvel, they're dropping it back to less shows, more films, looking at a broader picture. But before I hand over to you two, I'm going to say for anyone watching at home that I do think there are 2 big events coming up in the next 12 months. There is D23 in August, to which Disney will announce a lot of stuff, which is more important to Disney moving forward than Star Wars. There will probably be a Lucasfilm panel or Lucasfilm announcement within that day. But then we've got Star Wars Celebration in April in Japan. So there are 2 very big things to look at for when announcements could take place. But what do you both think? Because based on how we've spoken, I want season 2. And my caveat with the season 2 also comes with the Writers Guild of America strikes now over. One of the rules that's been put in place is that TV shows, streaming shows, have to have a writer's room. Now, I'm not going to get into technicalities of a writer's room, but there is only one Star Wars show that has had a writer's room. That show is Andor, and that kind of ends the discussion on what shows have benefited from a writer's room versus ones that haven't. So, Phil, over to you. Do you think we're getting season 2?
I think so. I think because of how it's laid out, and I also think because, okay, what I have not enjoyed the unwarranted bashing. I've enjoyed discussing with people who have legitimate gripes. If they've watched it and they didn't like it, cool, I'll have that chat. But what I've enjoyed watching is slowly over time, people just can't be bothered to keep on harassing it. So by the time we got to the finale, it's been left with who's really enjoying it. And honestly, I think it deserves a season 2. I think it deserves 3. I think there's enough story for more. We have had the kind of almost announcement that they are looking at doing a new animated show as well. That's kind of started up, and if we get a High Republic animated show, I think it could continue obviously in this vein. Obviously, we've got, as you said, Skeleton Crew coming end of the year, Andor season 2 is going to come out at some point. Ahsoka season 2, Mando season 4, films. We've got stuff coming out for live action. I do think they'll dial it back a little bit. But we've got SDCC coming up in a couple of weeks' time where they're going to talk about the publishing side. So I think we'll see some more bits coming off of that. I think there will be a season 2. In fact, what I've also seen a lot of advertising at the moment is on the High Republic stuff. They do say 100 years before the Acolyte, there is the High Republic kind of thing. So they're kind of linking it there. And there's stories to tell, and Darth Plagueis is one of those characters where even if they don't continue the Acolyte, there will be some sort of show or film somewhere down the line to kind of fill in that missing blank. But yes, to answer the question in a long-winded way, I do think there'll be a season 2. And I don't know where they're going to go with it, and I like that.
I think a season 2 is something that I want, and I feel like with the characters that we have, there's still so much uncertainty about all of them and about where things are going to end up, that to not continue with these characters would actually hurt this show. So it would be better to continue this. For Star Wars shows, I mean, at least with something like the Book of Boba Fett, which was just one season, I mean, it wasn't like things were left open as to, oh my God, there's so many plot threads that need to kind of be answered. And, with something like Star Wars, I think it's not like another, TV show where they may do one season and cancel it and that's it. And it's fine because it's just a brand new kind of, franchise or story or anything. Whereas, this is part of the Star Wars universe, and to kind of cancel it here or to not continue kind of, for me, would just be a mistake. And I think with these Star Wars stories that are told, we need to get them finished, or at least to a point where people can be happy to leave them. And that's absolutely not the case with this. This is not at a point where it's finished. So I would really love to see a second season. I mean, if there was only going to be 2 seasons, I'd rather them extend a season 2 to at least 12 episodes or something, so that we can get more out of it. And if it's whether or not it's something like an Andor where it's split into kind of a few sections, or half the seasons at one point and half the seasons at another point. And I think even something like that, marketing wise, it would even be better if it was like, okay, well, the first 6 episodes are going to be its own thing, and that's going to be aired over a set amount of dates, and you've got to wait 3 months or something, and then do the second lot of episodes. And I think that would be a really interesting thing to do, and hopefully keep people engaged, especially if there's a massive cliffhanger. I think there's so many things that you could do, especially if you use, a bit of time skipping as well. But as you said, there's other things that are coming up, and I think if my main concern about Star Wars right now is to just make sure that the stories that are currently being told and the things that are on the table get a natural conclusion, or at least get the love and attention that they deserve before starting new things. I think the new things should go into the films. Let's make sure that the TV shows and the things that a lot of people are enjoying are covered and are okay. My concern is just that there has been a lot of backlash. Not that, backlashes mean that, that's going to be it. But, it's absolutely going to be a talking point. This has caused, controversy, unnecessarily so, should this continue. Personally, I mean, the negative stuff that's happened is off-putting to the show, because even despite me trying to engage with more positivity, or at least criticism that feels, earned, there's still so much extreme negativity and, kind of hateful things put towards the show. And I look at one nice post and all the comments are one thing, and I don't know whether it's just a very vocal minority or if it is actually a larger group of people. So I'm really interested to find out what the kind of actual viewership has been, because as long as they have the viewers, that's it. And obviously just making sure that the cast and the crew are kind of protected from unnecessary kind of negativity.
No, I agree with everything you said there, and that's a really good point. I mean, obviously we're not Lucasfilm. They'll have access to the figures on Disney. They'll have also, people always hate this, but this is well known within the industry, they'll have access to the torrent figures. They can never talk about piracy, but do you remember the Game of Thrones cast used to always joke that they're the most pirated show every year, and that was like an award for themselves. So that stuff is looked at. They just can't obviously legally comment on it. I want to bring up a couple of comments before I chat to Robert Sampert. He put, it'd be interesting for Plagueis to occupy the Witch's Coven in order to create life and thus be able to create his own generations of Sith. For this, he would also need both twins. Agreed. And it looks like May's going to be sticking around, which could be very important. I hope they do something better for a second season to improve the script, the character development, and the acting. Let's hope for the best. And that's the kind of positivity you need, because there is criticisms of this show, very, very valid criticisms of this show. Some of mine is the writing, and I'm not saying that Headland's a bad writer at all. It's kind of what I just said there. I think this show needed a writer's room. And when I say writer's room, it's not Leslye Headland in a room with Dave Filoni and Pablo Hidalgo and someone else. You need to bring in experienced writers. Look at Andor. Tony Gilroy has his writing team. 3 or 4 episodes at a time are given to other writers. It's completely different shows. I understand that. But I do think with the new Writers Guild regulations, the new contracts, that could benefit not just the Acolyte streaming shows as a whole, across not just Star Wars, not just Disney, to Paramount, to Netflix, whatever. It could be a massive thing. And I think they could really benefit from this if some more experienced writers are brought on board. And again, if you're doing a second season, you're looking at the Plagueis side of things, the marketing is going to be itself, right? At that point, you can fully go, this is a Sith show now. This isn't an assassin. This is, look what season 1's done. Let's just go for it with the second season. And kind of with the history of the Star Wars prequels, George Lucas didn't change his ways because there was a very vocal minority complaining in 99. He didn't 180 his thoughts on the trilogy to appease them for episodes 2 and 3. Critics as well that went for those, not just fans, because George Lucas knew there were people watching, there were fans, and we obviously didn't anticipate the size of the generation that grew up with them, which I guess we're all a part of in our own way. And I quite like Lucasfilm to stick to that. And I don't want to sit here and psych off episode 9, but I will always look back to the whole, there's a very vocal minority, not vocal minority, there was very valid criticism of The Last Jedi. There was a split in fan bases. Rather than stick to a ballsier character piece or a certain writer, they opted for the nostalgic, fan-centric, safe option of The Rise of Skywalker. Completely different circumstance to this. But I hope that in the future they can take that ballsier approach to a show and say, you know what, no, we're sticking with this. We're doing it the way we want to do it. I mean, ironically, you could put Palpatine in the Acolyte, just a very different Palpatine to what would have been in episode 9. And maybe Matt Smith might be free in a couple of years when House the Dragon finishes. Who knows? We can finally get him back. Different conversation. But yeah, I'm hoping for the best with it. As you said, Phil, it's interesting they're now using the Acolyte to market the High Republic. That will bring in new fans into reading the books, to going into some of that era more so. And as you said, could there be an animated series? We've seen them in the games as well. We're in a really interesting time for Star Wars, for streaming, and a lot of other things. And I do really think that we might get season 2. I know I joked about Palpatine. I don't want him in season 2. I'd be really honest. I wouldn't need him in the show as a whole. I know he's in the old canon that he kills Plagueis on the night of him getting promoted to Chancellor, which is when I read about that, it's the plan in motion, fine, great, but if they were to bring Palpatine into it, there need to be some extreme time jumps, otherwise you're ending up in some weird Fantastic Beasts thing. But different conversation, that's a speculation video for another time. But the season 2 with Darth Plagueis, Khmer, and Osha taking on Venestra and May and many other things, the politics of the Senate, I'm all in for that. It's what I love from the Star Wars I grew up with, and I'd like to see a bit more. But that's my thoughts, anticipations. I mean, if I just give my final thoughts, I'll hand over to both of you two to talk final thoughts and maybe anything for season 2. I very much enjoyed the show. I'm still not fully in on the High Republic as an era. I appreciate this is the end of that era. But as I've kind of said, I like the politics within my Star Wars, and I can't really judge an entire era off one 8-episode series, right? Because this is 100 years after. Something that you said, Phil. But getting to the end of the episode series, I always said, I'd refrain from most criticisms until we've got the neat bow on the top. And as I kind of said, my issue is some of the writing, the run times of the episodes. I can't fault the production design, the costume designers, the visual effects departments. I just think if there's some more creative hands to assist, I think they'll nail it. And I'm I'm fully there to give them that support for a second season and to make some improvements, because there is a lot of potential with the series, and I think it would be easy to market and do a second season. And kind of Sam, what you said with the online side of things, yeah. I mean, I follow a few Star Wars pages, and once again, IMDb had 1 out of 10 hours before today's episode. The moment the ratings go, you can put a rating in. The episode's not aired; it's already been review bombed. Again, it's not taking valid criticism away. There's a lot of it, but by having review bombing and stuff like that, showrunners, producers, studios use that sort of thing to invalidate audience responses. They'll be looking at the real metrics that unfortunately we can't see. Obviously, if there's a film, you'll see the box office, and that's all you ever need to know. But Phil, heading over to you.
Yeah, I mean, was this perfect? No. Do I have some gripes with it? Yeah, of course I do. I mean, it's some of the writing isn't spectacular. Some of the acting hasn't been top tier, but that's part of the course, I guess. On some of these things, not everything's going to be 10 out of 10 from the moment it starts to the moment it finishes, and that's me sitting back and go, okay, there's some bits that I like, some bits I don't. It kind of is what it is. But the show as an entirety, I have loved it from start to finish. I've loved all the little details and nods to the books and comics and nods to just the aesthetics. There's a lot I can go into as a High Republic fan, but for anyone who isn't a High Republic fan, there's still plenty of Star Wars to enjoy. So yeah, for me, loved it. Looking forward to what comes next. And I do hope that they take on a lot more of the valid criticism, and I'm interested if they do, as you say, the whole writer's room thing. If that helps improve it, grand, bring it on, because there's so much scope to do. But I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, I've got to say, I mean, Andor and The Mandalorian are still kind of, for me, the better Star Wars shows, and this doesn't, kind of fall in line with those. But it isn't a bad show. I think it's very easy to look at the conversations that we have and kind of go, oh, well, we just talk positively and we don't critique it too much. And I think part of that is because we are not going to go and just badmouth an entire production from beginning to end. And I think a lot of my own personal gripes with the show have been fairly small and minor. So it's not necessary for me to point those kind of very specific points out because they are so minute within the grand scheme of things. I think there is improvement to be had, but I think as long as there's kind of a long-term, plan for this story and they stick with that, I think that's the main thing. I think especially with stories like these, if you then go to listen to fans and try and change, a lot of times it just leads to more kind of confusion and kind of something that doesn't fit with the original idea. So yeah, I'm fully kind of on board with, a lot of conversation about what this show is going to be, what it's going to lead up to in its end, and kind of work towards that. But I think overall, I've enjoyed the show. It's been entertaining. We've got, a new kind of era that we've not really seen in live action before. And, to have this now alongside something with like some of the story elements of Jedi Survivor, which I really loved as well. I think the High Republic is a really intriguing, part of Star Wars. And, we're just getting a very small story from this entire era. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more of that. And yeah, I can't fault the production of it. Visually, it's been stunning. And I've just loved what we've been presented with. And I think just with, hopefully kind of a tighter plot in some cases, some better writing in some cases, more engaging scripts, for some scenes, I think it could be a really, really fantastic show. And I think I disagree with criticisms about the acting. I think the acting has been pretty solid across the board. And I think there's been some real standout performances from almost every one of our leads. Those who are now no longer with us in the show, and some who are still with us. So I think, I really enjoyed it. And these characters are going to stay with people. I mean, the Yord Horde isn't going to die. People still love Jackie. People are still going to cry out for more Kalnaka. I agree too. And yeah, I want to see Indara's backstory. There's so many now new stories that could be opened up because of this, and some new characters that can have new stories built around them.
Yonaka is getting his own backstory in a comic next month.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hopeful for what this leads to, and yeah, maybe animation for High Republic. A lot of people have been saying start with the Clone Wars. So and I think I'm looking forward to it.
I am just a couple of things to touch on whilst we round out. I know it turns to sort of Q&A bit. I don't know if we've been going well over an hour. In the opening scene, when Kamir's eyes turn black, is it because of Osha's dark power or Kamir's witchcraft power to save her? I completely forgot about that moment. I've not seen anyone talk about that moment. I was saying it's a very good spot.
Because he's inside her vision. Her head. Same as when they were controlling Kelnaka.
And Tommen as well, I guess.
Torbin, yeah.
What I kind of want to go with, because you guys mentioned some of the, the characters won't be around. Did you guys see the Leslye Headland comments about Yord? Yord is a character she created, I believe, back either on the MMO Star Wars game or on the RPG Star Wars game, Knights of the Old Republic. I don't know which one, but Yord's a character that's basically been in her life for a long time. That's pretty fucking cool that you end up making a Star Wars show and bringing in a character you did back in the day and then snapping his neck, which is even more savage because normally that'd be the kind of character you'd want to keep going through to the end. But I guess not in this circumstance. And yeah, there's loads of things to touch upon, and I'm excited to see what may happen from it. You guys mentioned Kelneka, one of the most tragic characters in the whole show. The man got possessed by a witch. Is it Madclaw in Wookiee terms? And then they basically have to banish themselves forever. The four that went to Brandok, all tortured souls. It's probably something Taylor Swift to write about. I didn't mean to do a lyric if that is one. Sounds like the name of her album. But that being said, no more Taylor Swift mentioned Star Wars, please. Thank you. That's everything I could talk about the Acolyte today. And that kind of rounds up past season spoiler discussions. But once again, thank you both for being on throughout. I'm excited to get Dave's thoughts when he sees it and see what they are. And maybe there could be some more videos in the future because there's, we spoke about what season 2 could be or bring, and maybe that could be a video if there's a formal announcement. So that's going to do it for today. People might be thinking, when's the next Star Wars video? Well, I don't mind talking channel stuff. Personal life's been pretty big the last few months. So as anyone that watches our channel can tell, there has not been as many uploads as normal. Just for a variety of things. There were new shows that were meant to start that haven't started. So when the time is right, these will start. They're still being worked on in the background. One will be sooner than others. And that could be as early as next week. It won't be a Star Wars one, but there will be more Star Wars stuff in the coming months before we get to Skeleton Crew. And there will be weekly Skeleton Crew discussions. I'm kind of dreading that show in a really nice way. It's more the fear that we've seen nothing from it since Celebration. And a lot of other things. Although the Lego set's leaked, that's right. We've now got more official Lego images of the Skeleton Crew than we do the actual real show, which is terrifying. But I'm not going to be negative about that. It's basically Stranger Things in space for Star Wars. But that's going to round out this video. So once again, thank you all for watching, for you guys being on with me. If you're not watching live, you're watching later, do comment your thoughts on the show. As I said, we do want to get the differing opinions. We've given a lot of our criticisms of the show as well. Other people have in the comments. We don't hide from that. We want to hear about it because everyone has a different experience watching Star Wars. And if you want to find out about other videos, other uploads, get us on social media. So we will announce stuff on there, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. That'll pop you through to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Letterboxd. But that is going to do it for today. Thank you all for watching. Take care. We'll see you on the next one.